Okay, we're good to go.
Thank you, folks. Give it up for Jasmine. How about a nice round of applause here? Doing all the heavy lifting. We want to say thank you so very much, everyone, for coming out, and welcome to this Surviving and Thriving. It's a monthly series here at Gilda's Club, and we are really thrilled to be talking today about improv. And yeah, have that chat open. We're going to put some resources in there. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to use that chat as well. And then, yeah, we invite you to keep your cameras on, unmute yourself if you're speaking. If not, feel free to keep yourself on mute as you go. And let's kick things off with an introduction or two. Look at those. We are your facilitators. Kat, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our friends here?
Thank you, Jay. Well, it is nice to see everybody. Thank you all for coming. My name is Kat, for those who don't know me, and I have been volunteering and working with Gilda's Club since 2016. It turns out I did the math and I took a look, and I got involved because I wanted to give back to the community. Outside of Gilda's Club, I am a research project manager at Northwestern, and I've been doing research projects with those impacted with cancer for the last 5 to 7 years or so. And I've been doing improv around Chicago since 2014. So it turns out all those times are getting longer and longer. It's been almost 10 years, which I was thinking about that today. I know, which is odd because I'm, as you can see, 12 years old. So it's crazy how early we get started. And so let me pass it over to Jay, human male. Jay, would you like to introduce yourself?
That's right. Thank you, Kat. Yep, my name is Jay, and I'm originally from Chicago. I've been an improviser for over 30 years, and I got my start. I took class at Second City in Chicago, and my first teacher was Stephen Colbert, and then I had a guy named Steve Carell. I'm not sure what they're up to now, but I trust that they're doing well. They were great, and they spurred a love of improv in me, and it continues to this day. I started with Gilda's Club facilitating during the pandemic, and Kat and I have been running a class on Mondays, an hour long, which has been great. And it's been the highlight of my week for sure. And Gilda's Club means a lot to me personally. Both my parents passed away from cancer, but also someone who was in my very first improv group back in the early 90s. Her name was Judy Fabjans. She taught at Second City for over 20 years, and she was a member of Gilda's Club. And so this is a really special group to me. So we're both excited to have you here. And we've got a special guest we're going to introduce in a bit. So we're holding off on that, but we have a third as part of our posse here. And we are, yes, thrilled to be a part here of Gilda's Club Chicago. Kat, tell the folks a little bit about Gilda's Club.
I absolutely will. So for those who maybe have not been privy to Gilda's Club programming before, Gilda's Club is a nonprofit, and it is a place where adults and children whose lives have been impacted by cancer in any way can come and join a supportive community. It is named after Gilda Radner, who was one of the founding, I believe, or one of the earliest members of SNL and on the stages at Second City, who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in the 1980s. And she is quoted as saying it gave her membership to an exclusive club, that she was part of. And after she passed, her husband and others in her community helped start Gilda's Club as a place for support. So I'm calling in today from Gilda's Club Chicago. We're all virtual now. I know Jasmine can probably tell me more about how many Gilda's Club locations there are, but there is a beautiful red door in Chicago, and that's where I'm calling in from today. And I think that's a good taster to get us started, Jay, if you're ready to move on to the next slide.
I love it. Yeah. It's a great club in Chicago there. And now that they've transitioned also virtually, we can reach people all throughout the world. We're excited about that. Here's what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to look at what is improv, take a little look at the history behind improvisation. We're going to talk about some of the benefits that come along with improv, some of the benefits you might know, some of that might be news to you. We're going to play a little bit, and then we're going to have some time for some questions and answers as we go. And if you have questions, feel free also to put it into the chat as we go. Yes, and John, exactly. A little hairspray, Kat, and you could be Rosanna Dana, one of Gilda Radner's famous characters. So yes, so improv has roots in Chicago, as a matter of fact. And there was a woman named Neva Boyd, and one of the founders of theater games, Neva Boyd, was huge and instrumental in improv. And she was a pioneering social worker, an early theorist of the educational and social benefits of play. That was her main focus, is the benefit of play in groups, children and humans. And she trained social workers in that idea of group work. And she was involved in this early progressive education movement that flourished around settlement houses. And for Neva, play was its own end. She said, play is not merely amusement or escape from reality. Play has its own rewards. Play creates happy emotional condition, brings about disciplined emotional development and healthy emotions. And Neva Boyd knew that if you helped children with their language skills through this sense of play, it could really benefit them. It improves socialization, cooperation, and even morality, because everyone has to agree on the rules and abide by them in order for that game to be fun. And so the act of play actually changes the participant. And she also wrote that play involves social values, as does no other behavior. The spirit of play develops social adaptability, ethics, mental and emotional control, and imagination. So amazing start. She is one of the early pioneers, and she did a lot of her work at Jane Addams Hull House, which some of you may have heard of. Some of you may have not. It was at 800 South Halsted. It was on the west side of Chicago. It was a settlement house, and it was co-founded by Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr, and it was opened to serve basically European immigrants who arrived. And it was a place where immigrants of all diverse communities could gather to learn, to eat, to debate, to acquire the tools necessary to put down roots in their new country and take who they were and not assimilate into America, but bring it in, and then also find your community there. And one of her students was Viola Spolin. And Viola Spolin is considered the godmother of improv, the creator of a lot of the theater games. In 1923, she was 18 years old, and she started studying with Neva Boyd at Hull House. And Neva Boyd's theory of play inspired Viola so much, and she decided to create new ways of teaching dramatics to her students, who were often immigrants and children. And she would have a room full of immigrant children who didn't speak the same language. And so she thought, I'm going to create a language we could all share that we can then have a communication through. And it was called gibberish, and we still use gibberish in improv games today. She also wrote a book called Improvisation for the Theater, and through that she created these theater games. She said there's not a problem a game can't solve. And so she would look at her group and say, I have a problem with language. Let's create this gibberish, which overcomes language. So she's very influential. She studied with Neva Boyd for 3 years, and she believed that cultural and familial authorities often use approval and disapproval to control others. And that limited your ability to learn and your ability for experience. And so that's why she developed these theater games to help students learn more effectively. She's a fascinating figure, and I'm going to put in the chat a link. So if you want to know more about Viola Spolin, you can definitely go to violaspolin.org. But if you want to grab that link and learn more about her, she is just such an influential person behind improv, and also the American theatrical community, not just improv, but theater as well. And so there was the birth of improv. So Viola created these games as we go, and her son was a guy named Paul Sills. And Paul Sills learned from his mother these games, and then he created a theater troupe out of these games, which became the Compass Players. And the Compass Players was a precursor to the Second City. And so that's how we get to where we are with improv now. It started with Neva Boyd and Viola Spolin, and then led to Second City and led to improv. So everything in improv that we see now can be traced back to the teachings of Neva Boyd and Viola Spolin. I mean, it is truly a feminine art form, and they're so important here. One of the famous alums of Second City, and why we're all here, is Gilda, that's right, Gilda Radner. And yeah, Kat talked a little bit about Gilda before. She's from Detroit, and she actually was at the University of Michigan. Her senior year, she dropped out to follow her boyfriend, who was a Canadian sculptor by the name of Jeffrey Rubinoff, to Toronto. And in Toronto is where she made her theatrical debut in a production of Godspell. And it wasn't just any production of Godspell in Toronto. It was full of future entertainers, people like Eugene Levy, Andrea Martin, Martin Short, Victor Garber, Paul Schaefer. And the Second City was looking to expand from Chicago, wanted to open a theater in Toronto, and basically hired most of the cast of Godspell, including Gilda Radner, to create shows for the Second City there. And then she went from there to something called the National Lampoon Radio Hour. And then after that, in 1975, she was an original member, wrote her own material of the Not Ready for Primetime Players, which went on to be featured in Saturday Night Live. And so, yeah, she's huge in the entertainment industry, but also huge in our community. And from that came Gilda's Club, which was this network of affiliated clubhouses where people living with cancer, their family, their friends can meet and learn how to live with cancer. And it was founded by Joanna Bull and Radner's cancer psychotherapist, and as well Gene Wilder, who was her widow. And also Joel Siegel, a broadcaster. So they were the inspiration. They were the people behind Gilda's Club. And it was first opened in 1995 in New York City. Absolutely. Thank you for putting that in the chat, John. Good Godspell. Absolutely. That Godspell cast, unbelievable. So that's the origins of Gilda's Club, and it's still thriving today. And like Kat said, yeah, she said, cancer gave her a membership to an elite club I'd rather not belong to. You can read more about her and her story in the book. It's Always Something. If you haven't read that yet, it's a great book. So that's a little bit of a history behind improv, behind Gilda, and behind Gilda's Club, and why we're here today. So let's talk about what else we're going to do today. So a little bit of the history of improv we've talked about. What is improv? What do those games look like? I'm glad you asked. Thank you for asking, everyone. So we would like to play a little bit. So if you would like to volunteer and about what improv is, a little bit about, we showed a little play. We want to talk to you now a little bit about what some of the unexpected benefits are. And for that, Kat, I'm going to pass to you right now. So let's talk a little bit about what some of those benefits of comedy and improv are.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. And thank you all for participating. And so when we want to start off and thinking about this, laughter is the best medicine. And by a show of hands, or however you want to demonstrate that, who has heard laughter is the best medicine before? I think nearly everyone. And we were wondering, what is the truth behind that? And what does it mean? So we're going to transition to talking about some of the benefits. And I just want to let everybody start thinking about maybe a time in your life that humor was important or helped you get through something, or that it was a great time to laugh. And after these next couple slides, I'll ask anyone who wants to put it in the chat, and I'll just kind of share out some examples from our community here. So I'm going to start off by talking about the health benefits of humor just in general. And we know both science and psychology, which are one and the same, think that a good sense of humor has everyday benefits in two very important ways. They think there are some short-term benefits to a good laugh, and notably stimulating your heart and lungs, as well as helping induce a stress response and then bring a stress response down. So laughing kind of like revs you up and then will bring you back down, getting you into like a calmer mood at the end of it. And long term, they have evidence to suggest that it might improve your immune system and improve your overall mood. I think all of us who have had a chance to like laugh in our everyday life know what it feels like to have a hearty laugh and then come back down after and feel rejuvenated and feel refreshed. So that's just to kind of get us started on some of the health benefits of humor. And here's a quick snapshot, health benefits of humor. So humor and grief is one that seems like two things that wouldn't go well together. But I think in some of our lives, we've seen that laughing and joking can help in times of grief and stress. As I always wonder if anybody's had a release or they've felt better after telling a joke during a dark time or sharing a dark joke. I've heard from friends that sometimes joking about something is one of the ways they can get through it, and having somebody else there to laugh with them has been incredibly helpful. In specifics for humor and grief, a study from earlier in 2009 interviewed and measured reactions from about 300 men and women who had recently been widowed. And what they did was they recorded these people's belief in the importance of humor, and then also recorded their actual experiences of positive emotions and how it was impacting their bereavement and their grieving. And after several months, what they found is that experiencing humor, laughter, and happiness was really strongly associated with lower grief and lower depression. And interestingly, what they found too is that it didn't matter how much people valued those positive emotions, so how much they thought it was important. Across everybody, they found that people who laughed more were experiencing those positive emotions, the better they felt, which is really interesting. And I know from a lot of our personal experiences, we've been able to see some of that. It's not the only study that's showed findings like that. There's been a lot of research to suggest that humor can help in grief counseling and recovery. And some say that it dates as far back as the ancient Greeks having clowning as kind of one of their performance methods there. So humor and grief is just one of them. Thank you for those who shared in the chat some of their experiences with humor. I see Corson here put about your aunt's husband passing away, and any others I hope can reflect on how humor has maybe helped you through a hard time. And so what I want to do now is move on to talk more about improv in specific. So we talked about humor in general and now about improv. What about improv and wellness specifically? And what we have on the slide here is a snapshot of the actual website from the Second City here in Chicago, talking about the wellness programs that they offer. They have a whole wellness and community section, as well as here we have the logo for our special mystery guest who will be with us in a few slides, who also has an improv for wellness here. And there are many programs at the Second City and elsewhere, and I want to give just a few examples of programs that have been developed to help with wellness. So, for example, Second City has one that's improv for those living with Alzheimer's, and also at Northwestern. There's also improv for anxiety in both adolescents and for kids. And we have improv for care partners and people who are helping support those in their family with a physical or mental illness. And that's, that's not even starting to tap into how deep this goes and how much support is in improv. And for example, I'll share one study, a neuroscience study that has shown that even a 20-minute improv session for adolescents can help benefit their nervous system. They found that when they measured the brain activity of these adolescents after improv, there was increased connectivity and increased efficacy in terms of brain functioning. So we've even got some ties in there. They talked about it, that those adolescents who were receiving treatment for trauma, another sort of interesting emerging place where improv can be useful, have found that they think the yes and rule of improv has helped create a safe space for these adolescents to help process some of their trauma and be able to move forward. And they've seen evidence from brain scans to confirm. So those are just some very brief examples of some of the places where improv is being used in wellness. There's just so many others. And so we'll give a snapshot of some of those today, but we will put in the chat as many cool links and resources as Jay can come up with. He has so many to hopefully inspire you to think about how it's helped in your life or other ways that it might be helpful.
And
so let's
Kat,
go ahead.
Along with that, one of my first teachers, when I first started doing improv, he got his start not training at Second City or taking classes. He would go into prisons and create these improvised, realistic scenarios, and would get some of the inmates to help create them as well. And it was a really powerful tool. He would tell me these stories of how they went in, and it really allowed people to have their lives changed and have a voice finally. So yeah, there's so many different uses of it. And we're just scratching the surface. It's not just for the stage.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jay. And so I want to give, again, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the specific areas where we've seen that improv has helped with wellness, or that we've seen improv in the wellness space. And so one of the spotlights I want to put on is improv for social anxiety. This one is really near and dear to my heart, and I just want to give a few minutes about this one. Social anxiety, for those who maybe aren't familiar, is the very, very anxious feeling that people get in social situations, especially in front of a large crowd, or maybe performing, much like improv would have you do, perform in front of a large crowd. And it's how I got started in improv, was through Second City's improvisational for anxiety program back in 2013, 2014. And so the idea is that people struggling with social anxiety had a safe space to take part in an improv class and also do therapy sessions. And they would practice what we call exposure exercises from cognitive and behavioral therapy, or CBT, to get exposed to the thing that was so highly scaring them, and get a chance to practice in a safe space and learn that they were able to tolerate this very intense experience, and they were able to keep moving through it. And that's kind of what the exposure therapy piece was. And they also found that this was a very supportive and friendly space for people, and that developing this community with other improvisers and other people working through their social anxiety was incredibly meaningful and helpful. And so that one's very near and dear to my experience and to my heart. And it's just one example of the ways in which we think it can help with wellness and with mental health. Jay, did you want to add?
Well, Kat, yeah, go ahead, Kat.
No, I was like, Jay's going to add something, and I think what he's going to add is our transition, and so I will pass it on.
Well, I mean, it's interesting when we talk about social anxiety, like everyone's got it. Everyone feels that social anxiety, and I'm a performer by trade, and some of the people afflicted the most with social anxiety are performers who you would never think. You're like, oh, they know what they're doing. It's like, no, they have a lot of social anxiety as well. So this is one tool. Improv is one tool that gets you out of that and gets you in that sense of play, which gets you out of being concerned with what other people are thinking. That yes and is an idea of deferring judgment of yourself and others. So having that in your life, having that skill, I think really improves your life and moving forward. I tell people everyone should take one improv class. Just take one, but you'll learn some skills that you could apply to your everyday. And yes, without any further ado, let's talk about who our special guest presenter is. So this is somebody I've known for a long time, and is just such a leader in her field. And it's both with social work, with therapy, and also with improv. And her name's Margot Escott, and she is a licensed clinical social worker. She graduated from New York University and their social work department in 1983, and has been in Naples, Florida, practicing ever since. And in 1986, she became a licensed clinical social worker in Florida, and she has extensive postgraduate training in addiction studies, post-traumatic stress disorder, and cognitive behavioral therapy. And for over 30 years, she's presented workshops and seminars all over the country and all over the world on the therapeutic value of humor and play, and also improv for wellness on a national level, and has published several articles on humor, geriatric issues, and improvisational comedy. And for over a decade, she studied with a lot of the famous improvisational teachers on the planet, including Michael Gelman, Laura Hall, who is the music director for Whose Line Is It Anyway, and also the granddaughter of Viola Spolin, Aretha Spolin Sills. And when we were approached to do this, I said, I got to have Margot join us. because I've known her for a while, and she really, this is something she has a lot of experience in, and is such a great practitioner of this. She treats clients with all sorts of situations, from PTSD, anxiety disorders, grief, depression. And she uses improvisational games as well as mindfulness meditation and visualization. And she uses those exercises to help people suffering from a whole wide range of mood disorders, and also things like Parkinson's disease, those in recovery from addiction. And she has a lot of that wellness for improv classes and workshops that deal with that. She also teaches improv just as a theatrical experience as well. So she really goes at the best of the both worlds, and she has been doing it for a long time. And things like, not just people with Parkinson's, but people with movement issues, dementia, chronic illnesses, traumatic brain injuries, people with pain issues on dialysis. She works with caregivers for the chronically ill and the elderly, and her professional and personal experience with pain issues, with characters who are the caregivers for elderly patients. I mean, she does this on a weekly basis. It gives her such a unique perspective to help others, and such empathy in those situations. And she is a firm believer that many of our issues in life are not funny, obviously, but if you develop these humor strategies, you can cope more confidently with these difficult situations. So please, without any further ado, Margot Escott, will you turn on your camera? Let's give a round of applause for Ms. Margot Escott there. Margot, so happy to have you there. You do such great work, Improv for Wellness. And I want you to talk to these folks a little bit about your background, talk a little bit about how you help folks and care partners. You say care partners as well, but tell these folks a little bit about your background and what you're doing now on a weekly basis.
Well, thank you, Jay. That's the best introduction I've had all day. I'm so honored to be here. I really am. My mother and her sister and my grandmother all passed away from cancer. So Gilda's Club has special meaning for me, and I've even done some work at a Gilda's Club in Florida. So I appreciate being here so much. As Jay mentioned, I've been involved in humor and playfulness for a long time. I trained in something called New Games back in the 70s. And New Games some of them were like improv games, a little bit different. And for a couple of decades, I was training people in the healing power of humor and laughter. I love to teach people how to play, how to discover that childlike sense of wonder and discovery. And when I discovered improv, it was like, oh my gosh, this is it. I have found my niche. And I immediately saw the connection between improv and therapy. And I thought, man, I'm going to be like the first person to do this. And then I went on a Google search and found out I wasn't quite the first person, but I've been doing this for about 12 years now. And within the second year, I started to teach various classes. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I started teaching people with Parkinson's. My father was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 1998, and my husband and I took care of him the last 5 years of his life. He passed away with something called Lewy body, which is a severe form of dementia with hallucinations, behavior issues. But my dad always had a great sense of humor and was always able to laugh at things. One of the things that was really funny he would do, and I'm saying this in respect, having respect for him, but he had been an airline pilot for Pan Am, and we lived up in New Jersey. He would fly out of Kennedy, and sometimes he'd be in his wheelchair, and he'd wheel up to the door that led to the garage, and he kept kind of banging it. And I said, Dad, can I help you? He says, yeah, open the door. I've got to fly to the field. And I said, well, Dad, I don't know if you're going to fly to the field tonight, but maybe we can fly to the moon. And he loved music and he loved laughter. So I've been involved with the local Parkinson's Association here for 28 years and see many clients in my practice with Parkinson's and care partner issues. And I'm just so grateful for this experience. And Jay forgot to mention that one of my favorite improv teachers is, of course, Jay Suko. And I really enjoy playing and learning from Jay. It's just changed my life incredibly. Improv is just a gift that keeps on giving to people, and I'm really excited about different workshops and things I'm doing. And if you know anybody that has Parkinson's or a movement disorder, maybe CP, cerebral palsy, or Lou Gehrig's or MS, they're invited to come because we welcome anybody to play with us every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. And in fact, this Saturday, we're having a show. It's the Parkinson's inspired, uh, in, inspired people with improv performing Parkinson's inspired people performing improv. And that Jay just put up the link for you. And we're real excited about this show. It's the second one we've been doing, and we have people from all over, and we invite people to come because we appreciate suggestions that they put in the chat. And it's just an honor for me to work with that group. I'm very, very excited about it. And I also teach improv for anxiety and improv for other things. And I can't think of anything else unless you have a question, maybe.
I do have a question. And
Oh, okay.
I put in the chat, folks, I put a couple of articles, a couple that Margot wrote dealing with using improv to treat pain and anxiety with mindfulness and improv for people with Parkinson's disease. Also, there's a link to that show, and that show is featuring those students from, it's not just people with Parkinson's, but it's also their caregivers. So there is something special, Margot, about having someone and their care partner take place in these classes. What are the benefits of that? Like, what have you seen in those situations?
Well, one of the things is improved socialization. Ever since the pandemic and continuing, a lot of people don't really go out like they used to. And so all of my classes are online via Zoom,
Mm.
and we've formed a community, and they are so loving. And if somebody's having a problem, everybody writes emails to each other and supports them. So the socialization and the being together with a common issue is wonderful. Another thing is there's definitely cognitive benefits to doing improv. We have to use a different part of our brain. And when we start using the more creative part of our brain instead of the logical linear side, it helps to create something called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to create new neurons and to create new cells so that we're always, always working. And I see Ingrid has a question. Yes, I've worked with people with aphasia. Thanks for asking that, Ingrid, as well. A lot of the work we do is also nonverbal. And so we do a lot of things with movement. I always play music. We have at least two musical numbers in our classes, and mindfulness exercises where we can be still and get centered. And it's again, I'm so proud of these folks and so grateful that I'm able to work with them. I really feel honored, and they're just special, special people.
Yeah, and I see behind you, speaking of parts of the brain, you've got that brain on your poster behind you right there.
Yes, that's your brain on improv. And my wonderful friend Patrice created this for me. And it shows that you may not be able to see it all, but increases dopamine, which is really important for people with Parkinson's and the rest of us. It increases endorphins. It helps us to focus and really pay attention and be in the present moment. So often I myself will be thinking about what happened yesterday or what I have to do tomorrow instead of being in the moment. And yeah, this is your brain on drugs. That's funny. And so mental sharpness, and just the ability to have fun. We know that laughter itself produces the endorphins and promotes a good feeling. And I've done small studies showing a decrease in anxiety and depression after taking a 6 or 8 week course in improv. I've worked with teens that have anxiety, and imagine the anxiety teens are going through.
Absolutely. And so, yes, I know, Margot, you do not just those weekly sessions, but you also do one-on-one coaching with folks as well, or two-on-one if somebody wants to come out with their caregiver as well. So I think you're doing huge work in this. And yes, you can go to margotescott.com where there's a lot more resources and information as well. Definitely check out that Improv for Wellness show, which it's such a great show. I'll be tuning in myself. And I want to pause for a moment to see if there's anybody has any questions for Margot. You can put it in the chat, or you could just take yourself off mute and introduce yourself. But does anybody have any questions for Margot?
What time zone is the show?
It's Eastern time, so it's 10 Central, but 11 Eastern.
And it's 8 o'clock Pacific, and it's 7:30 Indian Standard Time. I've gotten really good at time zones doing virtual improv. So yes.
And
That
we
is-
really
Sorry, I
love-
can't read it. It says it right there.
No, John, thank you for letting us know. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Ingrid. Yeah, I have a podcast. Thank you very much. It's on my website. It's called Improv Interviews, and I think I've done about 150 podcasts. At first, I was focusing maybe on therapists who do improv, but over the years, I've met some incredible people, including, my friend and teacher, Aretha Spolin-Sills, Ed Asner. Oh, and Jay Suko. Out of the 150 podcasts, I think I've done 100 with Jay Suko. He has so much to share, he's just a wonderful person.
It's a lot of silence in those podcasts, but it's great. No, Margot, you have a lot. You have everyone from other social workers to performers to Ed
Yes.
Asner. Very jealous about that. So great. Margot, will you stick around and play some games with us in a few moments? Will you play with us?
Yes, absolutely.
Be the true improv, saying yes to those situations. Thank you for that, Margot. Margot, we're so thrilled to have you here. Yeah, and definitely check out our website and check out those articles. Round of applause for Margot Escott there. Thank you, Margot. And yes, Ingrid, thank you for putting that in the chat. Her podcast is great. It's all sorts of folks go on there talking about their experience with improv. So we wanted to take a moment to share a video here from some of our friends at Gilda's Club in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where they talk about improvisation for a little bit. And there's just a little snippet. And I'd like you to take a look at that. And if you could hear this, give me a thumbs up. You just never know. Zoom's gonna Zoom. But let's take a look at this. It is Melissa Budzinski, and she is part of Gilda's Club Grand Rapids. And Ruth Allman is a clinical social worker in Illinois. And she also is the co-creator of Improv for Care, which is a unique training program for family caregivers. And it was created in conjunction with Second City Improv and Caring Across Generations. And they talk about how caregivers can use improv and the skills that improv teaches you in their everyday lives to increase the quality of lives for their loved ones. And so I want to tune in just to hear a little bit about what they have to say, because I think it's really, really key. And we'll put the link in the chat here too. And
much like to really have what you need as a family caregiver, you have to have a good team of people around you. You need constant spontaneity in the moment, because things change and you don't have the answers and you're just trying to remain present and be with your loved one. And so that really oftentimes is about constant spontaneity, but it's about the importance of really good communication skills. And especially when maybe someone can't communicate with you the way they used to, whether that's in the moment or it's just, again, over time, is something that's getting lost to people, that ability to do that. Good improvisation requires embracing your mistakes and then letting it go. Oh, if you're a family caregiver, like, you can dwell on that stuff forever, right? But so how do you just say, yep, okay, what did I learn? Let's move on. And I had a family say this to me, and it just was so powerful, that one of the things they learned through improvisation, and as a good introvert, they said, was, it's not so much about me having to reach out to get help, because that to them freaked them right out. They were like, I'm so uncomfortable with that. But they said, but I can invite people in, like that I can do. And again, improvisation, again, as we'll talk about, you see how it really is about inviting people into what you're doing. And you also with improv, again, it highly relies on you to say, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but going forward anyway. Which again, for a lot of us, that's what happens. And it also is about, again, getting closer to living without regrets. Because in improv, you can't be thinking about, oh, I said the wrong thing 5 minutes ago, because you're required to be in that moment and listening to everybody around you. And oftentimes that's what does happen with family caregivers, for sure.
So I think that's a really powerful talk, and I put in the link there. It's about a 50+ minute talk, and it's just filled with this fascinating information. And yeah, we don't know what we're going to do next, but we still go forward. So I've got to surprise y'all. You improvise every day of your lives. Every day of your lives is improv, and improv gives you some tools to help in that situation. So definitely, yeah, Michael, I agree. It is a powerful discussion there. In the chat is the link for it as well. So feel free to take a look at that. It just was so enlightening. It really encapsulates everything about improv and how it helps out in our situations. The games created by Viola really were first used to foster community. And I think we found that. And for us doing Zip Zap Zoom, our improv weekly sessions has become this community. We see a lot of the same core people, and we're thrilled to have most of them are here today as well, checking this session out. So thank you for joining us, but it is definitely a community, and you're never alone in improv. You are never alone. And that's the thing that drew me to improv. It wasn't like stand-up where I had to be by myself. I was there with other people, and it was really something that made me feel part of something bigger than me. And that's something I didn't realize I was looking for as well. It's also gives us a chance to play. And for a lot of us, we haven't played that way since we were kids. So it really gives us that sense of play, which I think is needed in humans. And it builds these lasting bonds. I'm still in talks with people from my very first improv class 30 years ago. We're still in communication. So it is just such a great bonding experience. And that feeling of belonging, you don't really get anywhere else. I look around an improv room, including the ones we do on Monday, and it's like, how often would you meet with these other people unless it was through this improv? I looked around my first couple classes I took, and I was like, I would probably never be friends with these people, but in improv, I became friends, and it built that community right there, the feeling of something bigger than me. It helps you with self-awareness. It helps with thinking about how can something work instead of it's not going to work. How could it work? I know I dated someone years ago, and when we would get in an argument, she would say, like, treat me like your scene partner in improv, which changed everything about that relationship. I was like, you're right. I have to make you look good. That's the job of an improviser. Listen with your eyes as well as your ears. We heard it in the clip as well. Moment to moment, staying present. That's a big thing improv teaches us, is we can't get ahead of ourselves. We got to stay in the moment. We become others focused, which gets our ego out of the way. We focus on others and not ourselves. Collaboration is the key to improv. It's a must. Yes, and are two words that really define the mentality of improv. And it's about deferring judgment of others, but also of yourself, saying yes to yourself. How can I make them look good? How can I leave my ego at the door? We creatively problem solve all the time, and we work on vulnerability. So it is not just skills for a stage, but also skills for life. I never thought I would be doing this 30 years later, and it just is a testament to how powerful improv is. And it's helped me through, yes, humor has helped me through dark times. I remember my dad, when he had cancer, he was in the hospital, he was going like this. And I was like, what are you doing, Dad? He goes, I'm chasing the potatoes. And we just had to laugh at that situation. And it was like, that's the only way we could have gotten through it, was laughter. So we've talked about improv a little bit. We played a little bit. We've talked about some of the benefits of improv. We got time right now for any questions you might have. So if you have any questions of myself, Kat, Margot, or any improv questions in general, anything along those lines, feel free, put it into the chat. Take yourself off mute, but we will have time right now. Yes, Michael, what is your question?
Hey, I was wondering, is a lot of these benefits you're talking about, do you have to actually go and like perform on a stage to kind of receive these benefits?
Oh, no. Great question, Michael. As a matter of fact, most of the people that I've taught in my career, which has been almost 30 years now. I think I've been a teacher about that long. I would say 90% have no desire to perform on a stage. So these are not, we play these games in the comfort of a private class. So nobody even sees it. Some people have said, I want to continue on and perform. There have been a lot of people, like Kat is a great example. She's like, I want to, and she does entertainment, improv entertainment in Chicago. So she has done it, but it was not the goal originally. So no, this is by no means you have to perform or you only get the skills then. You do find the skills and it can be quite addictive, and you could want to do it again, but it's not by any means no. And that's what I loved is I found a bunch of people who said, I don't want to make a career of this, but I see it help me play with my grandkids better. I see it help me be a better listener. I become a better human. That's what really attracted me to doing this, not like the entertainment aspect of it. Yeah, absolutely, Margot, most of her students as well, no desire to be on stage. It's just, I want to become a better public speaker. I want to laugh more. I want to just have a social connection to people. I don't even know what I want. I just want to take a new class. I had a student once who said, yeah, I decided to take a class each year and improv popped up. It was like, okay. And then he took a class and he was really good. And I was like, you should think about performing. He goes, nah, I'm going to take a class in blowing glass. So he did it, and then he's like, I just want to take classes. He liked taking classes, but he was so good. But he's like, no, I don't want to perform. I just got out of it what I needed. So yeah, you don't have to be on a stage. And I'll be honest, most of the best work I've done has not been on a stage. It's been off stage with friends. And so that it's not that. Thank you for that question, Michael. Yeah, exactly, Corson. It's like some people wander in because they just want to take a class. A lot of people have taken classes in improv because of Groupon. They've gotten a Groupon. I'm not kidding. They're like, I saw a Groupon. People who have lived by theaters, who have gone on to be performers on TV and film, have taken a class because they were in a new city and they were lonely. So they took a class in improv, then they made it a career. So it could be I actually had a student who is a 65-year-old retired public school teacher who was in a class of mine I taught at Second City. And after each class, I said, what are you taking from today? And after the second week, she said, I wanted to punch you in the nose. And I said, why? And she goes, because you made me say yes, and I didn't want to say yes, but now I get it. And she went on to, she said, I play with my grandkids better. She created a nonprofit called Room to Improv, which brought improv into the public schools in Chicago, because she's like, I can see the value in helping humans. So you never know where it's going to take you. But yeah, you can just gain confidence in that situation and just give yourself a chance to get out of your comfort zone. Yeah, any other questions, folks? Any other questions? Feel free to put in the chat, take yourself off of mute.
I have a question for you,
Yeah,
Jay.
Kat.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I know you've been doing improv for so long, like if there was a moment in your career or a period of time where you said, you know what, this has so many more benefits than just performing.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that question. It's a great question. I never got into improv to perform. I got
Really?
into it. Yeah. I was like, my parents gave me a class at Second City as a Christmas present. But back then, it was a dead-end job. You didn't go anywhere with it. So it was like, I was attracted to not going anywhere. I was like, great, there's no pressure. And then I met the most interesting people in these classes. My best friend was 12 years older than I was. This big burly guy, but we had a connection. And so I was like, ooh, I feel more of who I am in these improv classes. I started noticing personally the change. I got more confident. I found people who understood me. I stopped chasing the people that didn't understand me and stopped trying to make them like me. And I really got a lot of skills out of it. Then I started teaching, and I started having people who said, you know, I use this, I'm a lawyer and I use it for my closing arguments. And I'm a teacher and I use it every day. So we started hearing from other people the benefits of it as well. But yeah, I noticed early on for me, I was like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. Like right away, I was like, it's like a sport. I love it. It's like a sport. I'm not by myself. I'm part of this collective. They're very interesting people. And that gave me a start right away. But the teachers had a lot to do with it. The people in my class had a lot to do with it. If after the class, they said, let's go take a dancing class, I'd be like, okay, They're like, let's not do improv anymore. I'd be like, fine, because it was the group. So the group really made it
Mm.
special for me. What about you?
I think that's very cool, Jay. I didn't realize that you had not gotten into it from the beginning to be a performer, and we've been
Oh yeah.
working together for years.
Yeah.
I got into it to start as part of the Improv for Anxiety program. And so I was doing it, to be like, I know I have anxiety and I like performing. Maybe this is like a route in that would help.
Mm.
I know, Pat, I know. I had a therapist be like, you like performing, maybe you could do a performing based treatment. I was like, great. So it's
Wow.
not always the best fit I don't, but I found that improv has been immediately helpful. And I don't know if anyone else can relate to this. I found myself in improv classes being so frustrated that the person I was working with was not giving the right answer. They were not giving the answer that I thought they should be giving to the scene, to the prompt, to whatever.
Yeah.
And I was so worked up and frustrated and found myself saying, oh, that's really interesting. Because as Margot just said in the chat, there's no mistakes in improv. The idea is that you're working with another person and building off of what's going on, and together you co-create. And so I noticed this feeling of frustration, and just improv forced me to kind of confront that and learn how to be a better person just in general and give and take. And it was very cool to me. And for me personally, having to confront that feeling of like, I don't like having the uncertainty, I feel very nervous, has been a really cool benefit that I was experiencing, and just got so much joy from that. It sounds like you and Margot also. I was ready to just let's have it help as many people as we can convince to try a class.
Well, yeah, I mean, it gives you more insight into you than anyone else, honestly. That's
Truly.
the thing. And I had a mentor, Martin DeMott, who said, the world would be a better place if everyone took one improv class. And that's kind of a mission I have now, because I believe it's true. And I believe what you're saying is absolutely true. And I remember getting frustrated. I'd been performing for about 15 years. And I took a break from a theater in Chicago, and I went back, and I would come home to my significant other and say like, oh, they're not improvising the way that you should. And she goes, they don't have to. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. She goes, no, I get it. She's like, just if it's frustrating, you leave. And I went, that's a life lesson. If this is like, they can do whatever they want, and I should celebrate them. And that's what I got into improv to do. And I lost track of it. And then it came back. It was like, yeah, I want to highlight who you are. I don't want you to change to do something I want you to do. I want you to bring you to this. And I think that goes back to the teachings of Neva Boyd and Viola Spolin, which is like, bring yourself to this. Don't change who you are. They never, as teachers, Viola Spolin never said what somebody did in improv was right or wrong. She would say, we have a goal. Did we achieve the goal? And that was the note, is not, was it good or bad? It's like, did we achieve the goal? And I got a question in the chat too. If I could choose between performing and teaching, what would I do? Now I'm at a point where teaching means more to me than performing. I think I was talking to a friend of mine who started around the same time I did, and she said, yeah, I don't really have the desire to perform anymore. And I like performing, but I don't have as much of a desire as I do teaching right now, and teaching people life lessons and helping them be better people. I really enjoy that. Great, Karen, thank you very much. We see you in the chat. Thank you for being a part of this. Where in the world has improv taken me? Ingrid, I've been lucky enough to travel all over the world during improv. I spent almost a year in Copenhagen, Denmark, running an improv theater, which I could not believe. I've traveled throughout the world, teaching and performing improv everywhere from London to Scotland to Norway, Sweden, all over the world, New Zealand. So I'm really fortunate to have improv as something that's allowed me to spread this joy. I went to Barcelona about 7 years ago, and that really opened the door to international performing. So once I did a festival in Barcelona, I got a lot of opportunities to do festivals everywhere else, and I love it. So I don't travel as much now as I used to. I've got small kids, and I just don't have that thrill anymore to travel, but definitely it's taken me some great places. John, is it a coincidence that 3 people have the last, hey, Kat, is it a coincidence there are 3 people with your last name on the call?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Jay. I've never met these people in my life. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Strangers.
What, for those who don't know, how do you pronounce your surname?
Oh, that is a great question. It's pronounced Boberg. Just ignore the V and J when you're saying it. Oh, we got a special cameo from the people that I don't know. There's no family resemblance.
Oh, hey, I
And-
actually pronounce my last name differently.
Oh, that's interesting. That's fine because I don't know who you are.
yeah. So.
No, we are so excited to have all the Bobergs here today as well. Wherever you are from, hopefully you'll get to meet each other and see if you have a connection somewhere down the line. Probably not. So thank you. Thank you, folks. And if you have any more questions, feel free to put that in the chat. But yeah, Kat and I came together. We've never met in person. We've only met virtually. And I love Kat to pieces. She's a great performer. She's a great teacher of improv as well. And each week we have such a joy teaching some of the folks who are here today. So we wanted to, as part of our session today, we talked a little bit and played a little bit, but I want to play a little bit more. And so if this comes to us every Monday, 4 to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, you can register through Gilda's Club right there. And also, if you're interested in Margot's class, Improv for PD, Parkinson's disease, and care partners, it's there. It's Saturdays, 10 to 12 Central Time, online via Zoom. You can check out Margot S. Scott at mac.com. If you would like to register with her. Also, he is not with us today, but he is with us in spirit. Ross Alexander, big round of applause for our program manager with Gilda's Club Extraordinaire. And also, thank you to Gilda's Club as well. We really appreciate you having us out here for our series. And Jasmine, who stepped up to the plate right now.
Hey, Jasmine.
We really appreciate having you as part of the team, Jasmine. Jasmine, thank you so very much. Kat, and thank you to you for being a part of this. Could not be done without you. You are such a pivotal part of the program there at Gilda's Club. So thank you very much, Kat.
Thank you, Jay, for being here and for helping with all of our improv and coming in and as an improv extraordinaire during the pandemic. And last but not least, thank you to every single person here and to every person in our Monday class who performed today. Phenomenal job. Aren't they amazing, everybody? Let's get a round of applause. Thank
Yes,
you.
I love it. Michael. Absolutely. That's the correct way. The round of applause there, the literal. Thank you so much. Jasmine, any final thoughts for you? Anything you want to say to take us home?